I'll wait for the cue. Hi, and welcome to my workshop on time management and college success tips. My name is Mackenzie Warren. I am a rising sophomore at Duke University and a resource that I will be talking to you more about at the end of this presentation is my YouTube channel, Max School Prep. You can see it on the screen, and you'll have access to the website and the YouTube channel name at the end. But if you love the content that you're hearing today, I have more and more on my YouTube channel for you to check out. But with that, let's just go ahead and dive right in. All right, so today's learning objectives are going to be to learn and take away some concrete steps and strategies for effective time management. I know that I'm somebody, when I'm trying to learn a new skill, I want to be kind of equipped with the step-by-step action plan. And so that's hopefully what I'm going to be able to do for you today. And we're going to take this abstract concept of time management and really make it something that's not abstract, and just kind of give you that step-by-step blueprint for what does it mean to effectively manage your time. In addition to that, we're also going to be learning how and what it means to thrive in college, not just merely survive. So hopefully you caught at the beginning of this presentation, I am a rising sophomore. So I finished my first year at Duke in a very completely virtual world, but there were some important takeaways that I will be applying to the rest of my experience in college, and I'll be sharing with you today. So first things first, let's go ahead and define what exactly is time management. So time management, as we can see here on the slide, is appropriately allocating your time to tasks so that you can, keywords here, maximize your productivity. And so I want to really zoom in on productivity, what that looks like. So productivity is about producing quality work in a sustainable way. And we're going to break down what sustainable means. But before we get to that, quality work is the product that you're going to want to submit to all of your courses while you're in college. You want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, submitting, honestly, shooting for that A. So making sure that all of the work that you're turning in is nothing short of what you're capable of, and really trying to meet the expectations of your teacher, whatever it is that they've laid out for you. But you want to make sure that you're able to put your best foot forward in what I say here, in a sustainable way. So to break down sustainable, really what I'm getting at is, we can take a car, for example. When a car is on, its gas tank is on F, it's on full, car's running smoothly, things are going well. But as that gas starts to empty out of the tank, you might be worried about things breaking down. You might be worried about getting stalled on the side of the road, all things that are negative. And so really sustainably means making sure that you have gas in your tank at all times. You have energy that you can give to your schoolwork so that, again, your product is quality, so that it is a job well done. You don't want to get to the point where the work that you're submitting is quality, but it's at the expense of your mental health, your own, getting sleep. You just want to make sure that you're at your peak functionality, both with your work, but also as a person. And you're not like, there's this saying, running on fumes. You don't want to be, where you're just addicted to coffee because you're not getting enough sleep at night. So that's where that term sustainably comes into play. Now that we have defined what time management is, we are going to break down the importance of time management. So first, let's just look at, what is time? Time is obviously, it's something that's very abstract. We think of clocks, etc. But I want us to really hone in and think of time as a resource. It is something that allows us to get what we need to get done throughout the day. Without time, we wouldn't be able to go to school and accomplish all those tasks on our to-do list, or meet with our family, or meet with other our peers, etc. So time is something that allows us to be productive. It is a resource that is extremely valuable in that way. But the important caveat about time, and the reason that we have this word time management, is because time not only is a valuable resource, but is a resource that is limited. It is a resource that is scarce. And so what I'm getting at when I say that is, well, we only have 24 hours in a day, 24 hours to be productive, but not even really, because some of that time is spent sleeping. And when we're sleeping, we can't really do two things at once and be sleeping and doing, our schoolwork, right? So, if we're trying to be healthy here and we're getting our 8 to 10 hours a night, we really only have about roughly 16, 17, 18 hours to be productive and to be engaging with our work. So again, that is why it's so important that we're managing time appropriately and effectively, so that we can take advantage and maximize time as a limited, scarce, but valuable resource. Another reason that time management is so important is because for rising first years that are watching this, or even students that are in college now, something that you're going to learn, maybe something that you've experienced, is that as students, we have such busy schedules. We have our hands in a lot of different pots. We have a lot of obligations and commitments that we're juggling. And these aren't just academic, going to class, doing our schoolwork, but it's also clubs that we're plugged into. And maybe those clubs are, obviously that can cover a breadth of areas, but maybe it's a sports team or, some sort of extracurricular activity that takes up our time. Some of us are going to have jobs. Maybe we currently have jobs or will have jobs. And so that's just another place that is demanding our time. More things just to add to our plate of things to do, things to juggle. And all of those activities, especially with this transition, slowly but surely going from a virtual sort of learning environment back to in person, all of these activities are going to become more demanding with that shift. And reason for that is, obviously, back when, some of us are still doing, virtual learning, but it's easy to 1 minute before class starts, just pop open our laptop, no matter where we are, and log into our classroom. But in an in-person environment, there is, commute time that has to be taken into account, which is one of the biggest areas where we discount how much time goes to that. I know on my college campus, something that I'm worried about is we have two campuses where there's a bus that connects that connects the two campuses to one another. And I have classes on both of those campuses. And with in person, I know that, getting to meetings and classes, etc., I'm going to have to take into account of, okay, I got to walk to the bus stop. I got to sit on the bus. And so those activities that once, seem like a lot are now going to become even more demanding, meaning that this purpose of time management is even more precious and even more essential. Now, a note on having a really busy schedule, having all these things that we're juggling. I want to just throw out a special caveat and talk about overcommitment very, very quickly. Speaking from personal experience, I'm somebody that is very overzealous to just get plugged in with a whole bunch of things. I have a lot of passions, a lot of interests, a lot of loves. And so that sometimes gets me in a lot of trouble because, again, we got to go back to time is limited, time is scarce. Literally, it is not feasible, no matter how good of a time manager I am, for me to, no matter how good at time management I am, for me to do all of those things without something being sacrificed, without my sleep, my well-being, my mental health being sacrificed. And so, speaking from experience of knowing what it's like to stretch myself too thin, my advice for you is go deep with your passions. Figure out the things that really, really make you tick and invest in those fully and thoroughly. And sometimes that means letting some other things go, not being involved in 5, 10 different clubs, but maybe just being involved in 2 to 3 that you can really, like I said, immerse yourself in and go deep with. So yeah, transitioning to this next reason for why time management is so important is it also permits the balance of what I like to call, I don't know, maybe somebody else likes to call it this too, but the 3 S's. I think I'm being kind of creative, but it is school, sleep, and social. These are, if we have a triangle, these are the 3 points of the college balanced triangle. And so success in college typically is going to incorporate a little bit of all three of these activities. If you're doing all school and all sleep and not getting any social, you are really not maximizing how healthy you could be. To fully be at the pinnacle of well-being, you have to have all three. We're social creatures, so we have to also make sure that we're just having interactions with friends and professors and family members, etc. So something that I do want to say, though, is that time management is so cool. And I think a lot of people discount what it allows us to do in terms of this customization of our schedule. And so I know for me personally, I am somebody that my schoolwork is really, really, really important to me. More important to me than going and hanging out with my friends and catching meals. And we're going to get into how that also got me in trouble. But with time management and customizing your schedule, you can figure out how much time it is that you want to build into your schedule to dedicate to each one of these three S's. So maybe, schoolwork, obviously, the school should be like a full-time job. So you should be dedicating at least like 40 hours to school a week. But in terms of this kind of sleep social dynamic, some of us only need 6 hours of sleep. Some of us maybe need 8, 9, or 10. And so actually building that into our schedule and knowing it's really important to me that I want to get 8 hours of sleep a night. So that means that I want to go to bed at 10 o'clock and make sure that I'm waking up at 6 a.m. because I'm an early morning person. So you can kind of play with your schedule and figure out, with good time management, how much it is that it is important that I'm getting, XYZ hours of sleep, XYZ hours of social, and just building that in. But kind of the caveat to that, the important note to that is, do not forget why you are in school, which is to make sure that you're graduating with a degree, being kind of springboarded into the workforce. So like I said, at least 40 hours should be going to your schoolwork, shouldn't be doing 40 hours of socializing. I don't know how that would be sustainable for actually still being able to get good grades. So not forgetting the real reason that you are paying to go to school. All right, so I've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but kind of to go fully in here with my reflections on my first year in college and really tying that into time management and some success tips that I want to share with you all. The first thing is, hopefully this is a pressure relief to know that at Duke University, something that I was scared about going in, especially because I took a gap year after I graduated from high school in class of 2019, I was afraid that there was going to be too much work and that the workload would be too challenging for me. And so, like I said, hopefully this comes as a pressure relief, a source of mitigated anxiety to know that those two things were not a problem for me. If you are somebody who goes in with the mentality that, hey, I'm here to learn, and at the end of the day, I'm also here to get my degree, and I'm going to prioritize school because of that, those two things shouldn't be a problem for you either. But for me personally, what I struggled with was the way that a college school day is structured. So if we think back to what it was like in high school, we get to school, classes typically start at 8:30 a.m. and we don't get released from the campus grounds until like maybe 3:30 or 4 o'clock. So our body is inside of these campus walls for 8 hours a day, potentially more, depending on when you leave the campus and when you arrive. And obviously you were sitting in class, but in chair for the majority of that day as well. And so to kind of compare that to what college is like, is you are not in one building for 8 hours a day at all. Classes are really just kind of spread out over the course of the week, and you're able to build your schedule. So, if you're somebody that wants to take classes in the morning, majoritively, you can do that, or, take classes majoritively in the evening, you can also do that. But to give you a little taster of what I'm referencing here is, like, on Friday, because of the way that I've built my schedule, I have one class. 8:30 to 9:30, and then the rest of the day is completely free. And so what this kind of gets me into is because some of my other days, I may only have 2 classes, maybe a 10:15 to 11:30, then big block of time, and then a 5:15 p.m. to a 6:30. So it seems like on these days, because it seems to me, because I wasn't having my butt in a seat for 8 hours of the day, and I was just really, okay, an hour and 15 minutes here, an hour and 15 minutes here, oh, 1 hour, and then the rest of the day is free. I had this illusion that I just had so much time on my hands. I was like, wow, look at these big gaps in between my 12:30 and 6:15. Like, whoa, I just have just so much time to do my work. And so obviously, some people might take a different approach and be like, oh, I just have so much time to go socialize. Maybe let me go sit on the main quad and just catch up with my friends until, my next class. So just kind of let these 6 hours just blow by. My approach was like, okay, let me just bury myself into my schoolwork. And the thought process behind this was, okay, more time that I spend writing this essay, that means it's just going to be an A+++++ essay. So what I was doing was really pouring myself into my studies, but to a very, very unreasonable degree. And when I say unreasonable, I'm meaning that an assignment that should have probably taken me an hour max turned into maybe 3 hours or 5 hours that I was spending on it, because I was just like, let me just keep making it better. And I know that kind of when I compared myself to what some of my peers were doing, take my French class, for example, I was submitting 650 word responses compared to their submitting 200 to 300 word responses, and all of us are getting the same grade. And so, like I said, pouring myself into my studies to a very unreasonable degree that, yes, translated into me finishing my first year with all A's, but also at the end of my fall semester, I was on the brink of just like collapse, like so bad to the point that when I went home, I literally was desperate to just like kiss the airport floor. Like, that's how happy I was to be away from my college, because I had just associated it with work, and no play. I would spend all of my time in my room. I would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at my computer. I didn't have a social life. My sleep schedule was bad because I was like, I just got to do my work. And my mental health was really bad too, because I wasn't taking those opportunities to just relax and refuel. And I wasn't operating sustainably, which we talked about in the beginning. I was running on fumes. And so to address all of that, I took my 7-week-long winter break, because fortunately COVID allowed us to have a really, really big hiatus between the fall and spring semester. Took some time for reflection to figure out, okay, how are we gonna get on track for the spring semester so that we don't feel like we want to kiss the airport floor? And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about now. So the first big takeaway that I really was able to identify over my hiatus before the start of the spring semester was how important it is to ask for help. There are resources now I know of on, at my university's campus, and I know at all university campuses that are literally in place and established to help students that are struggling with time management, maybe not dedicating enough time to their studies, and me dedicating way too much time to my studies. And so I ended up meeting with a consultant in the Academic Resource Center, and she sat me down and she was like, hey, we're going to really go through and identify what is a reasonable amount of time that you should be spending taking notes on your psych textbook or doing this. And so we kind of talked through that. I compared it with what upperclassmen who had previously taken the class, what they did to still get good grades, but how much time they were dedicating to their studies. And so that was able to really help me come into the spring semester with this mentality of, okay, I don't need to be the standout. I don't need to be the standout student. I don't need to be shooting for the A+++++++. We just need to do what the teacher has asked and move on, because 5 hours on an assignment that really should only take 1 hour, just take the 1 hour and use the 4 hours to do something else. So that's the first really, really big takeaway that I took. And then the second one is eliminating this illusion of having lots of time. Like, like I said, maybe my class would let out at 12:30 and then pick back up at 5:15. So I was like, I need something to fill that big gap so that I will feel more motivated to be productive in those smaller blocks of time. And so I decided to get a job where I was spending 10 to 12 hours a week working as a library student assistant, which I didn't get to do homework on the job. So it wasn't to actually do more homework, but I was like moving and grooving for those 10 to 12 hours. So that got me out of my room, got me away from my books. I enrolled in extracurricular activities. Duke mock trial was something that I did do in the fall, but it became more demanding in the spring. And so that was taking up 10, 12, 15 hours of my evening time, my weekend time. So shrinking that illusion of having lots of time. And then in addition to that, I made it a priority that every single meal, 7 days a week, during lunch and during dinner, I needed to be with a person. I needed to be out of my room and I needed to be away from my work. There is no reason to be eating with your homework. And so I scheduled in my friends into, I gave them 1 hour, 12 to 1, and my dinner time, 6 to 7 or 6:30 to 7:30. And that was, when I give somebody my word, when I make a commitment, I knew I would show up regardless if I haven't had a ton of work to do. I was like, this is a break that I know I maybe didn't realize I needed, but I actually needed. So scheduling fun social time into my schedule. And then this kind of goes back to what I was mentioning with the Academic Resource Center and how they made me change the way I was thinking about my work, but really just setting reasonable goals for how long assignments should take. At the end of the day, in college, when it comes to your schoolwork, because like I said, we need to be at the balance of social, sleep, and school is to be efficient. Work. You want to work smart and not hard. So making sure that you're just being efficient with your time, but still, productive, still submitting quality work. So getting as much done as you can, but in a fashion that is sustainable and in a fashion that is allowing you to still be quality and do a good job. So remembering to work smart and not work hard. And so really the way that I did this was, okay, when I first got an assignment, I looked at the expectations. It's like, okay, what are they asking of me here? And, maybe running it by my peers, seeing kind of where their head was at and figuring out, okay, reasonably based on things I've done in the past, based on things from high school, I know how fast I can write. I know how my brain works. What is a reasonable amount of time to be able to still meet all the qualifications that this teacher is asking for, but still allowing me to have fun and do what I want to do. So assigning a reasonable amount of time to the work. And that can also change based on how your professor doles out grades. Maybe you realize that you've settled on a really, really easy professor that's not even reading your papers. And so if you come across that sort of situation, maybe that means dedicating even less time to writing, to writing the essay, doing the assignment, etc. If it's a completion grade, you definitely shouldn't be spending like 5, 6, 7 hours on something you're teaching. Be like, okay, looks like they got it all, check. So taking that into account as well. And then another thing that kind of goes into kind of setting these goals for yourself is having discipline about what it is that you are going to accomplish. And so I know that when I started out kind of at the very, very beginning of the fall semester, probably for about maybe 1,000 words of text, I was spending like 45 minutes writing notes on that. That is not reasonable at all. And so I was like, you know what? We are going to cut this down tremendously and spend 15 minutes reading and taking some annotated notes on this. And so the way that I forced myself to go from 45 minutes to 15 minutes is I would say, okay, I have 12 to 1 o'clock that I'm going to be working on my psychology. I know I'm going to be taking notes. I want to make sure that I get through 4 sections that are 1,000 words each. So I have no choice but to dedicate 15 minutes to each, because I am holding my feet to the fire about accomplishing those 4 sections in that 1 hour, hell or high water, it's getting done. So kind of forcing myself to be disciplined about that also just kind of got me out of my habit of overworking. So yes, those are the first sets of takeaways for them for my first year. And then the next set of takeaways that are a little bit less related to time management, but nevertheless still important, is comparing yourself to your peers. As humans, we have a tendency to be like, hey, what's Billy Bob Joe doing over there? Or, what are my grades like in comparison to what so-and-so is doing? That is a bad habit, especially in college, because what you are going to realize very, very quickly is that people aren't always going to be honest. Most people aren't going to be honest about when they are struggling. And so I know that obviously, like I've shared, my fall semester was tough. And I was not in a very good place. And it only made me feel worse when I would ask people that I thought were my friends, or even just people from my classes, like, hey, how are you feeling about your workload and XYZ? And them just being like, I'm good. It's easy money. I went to the party last night. I did this. I'm sleeping. I'm social. That just made me feel worse to hear that, okay, well, apparently I'm not doing something right. I came into college thinking like I'm a really good student, and I'm really, really struggling. And it seems like nobody else around me is experiencing the same thing. And so the reason for this is there's an analogy, especially at Duke, that we like to use, which is the duck on water analogy. And so on the top, superficially, if you just look at a duck, on top of the water, things look serene, it's moving along, real tranquilly, and all is well. It's just looking like the duck is just very serene and calm. And so that's sort of the facade that a lot of college students want to keep up. All is good in the hood over here. When in actuality, if you were to just put your goggles on and take a peek underneath the water, you would see that the duck's webbed feet are just rapidly paddling. And all is not very well. And the duck is having to work very, very hard to keep up that facade. And so again, that just kind of goes to say, like, if you're asking around how people are doing, you're probably not going to get the real true blue truth. So might as well just do you and not ask. But in addition to that, all of us, every student in college, like no student is going to have the same schedule as you. In high school, a lot of us are taking the same English class, a lot of us are taking the same math class, etc. But in college, you can meet somebody, you will meet people. Most people are going to have a schedule that looks completely different from yours. We're majoring in different things, minoring in different things. We're academically oriented towards different fields. And so again, no sense in comparing yourself to somebody whose experience is literally incomparable to yours. So just save yourself the heartache, and just don't ask. And then another thing that I want to share is how important it is to take breaks. College is a 4-year, maybe longer, marathon, right? There is no reason to just be out of the gate, just trying to really, like I said, immerse yourself into your studies and not do anything else and bury your head in your work. Because again, it's not going to be sustainable, and you're going to burn out. And you don't want to burn out. You want to make sure that you keep that fire for learning and, just doing your work. You want to keep that fire alive, keep it stoked. And so the only way to do that is making sure that you're giving yourself opportunities to refuel, to rejuvenate. And so how do you do that, you ask? Well, first thing is don't do what I did and literally go to the library for 6 hours and just stare at your computer for all 6 hours and not even get up to go to the bathroom, not check your phone, not eat a snack. Like, just don't do that. Really, when you're studying, you want to make sure that, maybe every hour, every 45 minutes to an hour, you're stepping away from all of your work. Go take a walk, go just shut it down. Don't look at it for maybe 5 to 7 minutes. Literally just give your brain an opportunity to just recoup and say, okay, I'm feeling re-energized. Now let me go back to my work with a new perspective. Because if you kind of do that 6-hour stint like I did, productivity that whole time is just going to be going down and down and down, and probably with more time that passes and not taking a break, down and down and down, even with a steeper slope. So you want to make sure that productivity stays at least consistently high, or maybe even raises every time you take a break. Other opportunities to take breaks, throughout the day. is during your eating time. No reason that you should be eating with your computer or your textbook, making sure that you're being so, and not even, maybe not all of us are social, but when you're eating, that time is very precious. Go outside, sit on a bench, be with somebody, but do not eat with your work. That should, and again, be another opportunity for your mind to just regenerate. Also for me, I typically, at least starting in the spring semester, would try to make my Friday and Saturday nights no schoolwork. And so I would go and maybe do a movie night with some of my friends, or take a mental health day and or mental health night and just stay in my room and read a book or watch a movie by myself. But those nights specifically were sacred to me. And so that gave me the motivation during the actual day, Friday during the day and Saturday during the day, to really be gung-ho about, okay, let me get my work done, because I know that tonight I'm not cracking a book. And then Sundays as well, we're also, going into the spring semester, my break days, because the thing is once you get to college, you're going to realize that mom and dad are no longer around to vacuum your room and do your laundry and, clean and make your bed and, hang your clothes. That all falls on you, and you don't want to allow that stuff to get out of control either. And so my Sunday was like kind of my house cleaning day of just like making sure that everything was clean and good and organized going into the next work week. And then lastly, obviously, something I realized way too late is college is about having fun too. Not just doing your work, but also, taking advantage of opportunities to pursue really niche, unique classes that spark your interest. Making sure to get plugged in with the plethora of clubs and teams that are offered on your campus from literally literally all fields. It's just crazy how many opportunities are available. It's about being social. Like I said, that's one of the points of the triangle. So making friends, meeting people, networking, going and talking to professors, and with relationships with professors comes opportunities to potentially ask about internship opportunities during the summer or something like that. So when you have a good relationship with your professor, they are going to be more inclined to help you advance towards your goals. So not taking that for granted either. And so just a quick little anecdote about, like I said, I didn't really realize how important it was to have fun, was, my experience with the mock trial team was taking up so much of my time. And it wasn't something that I was feeling fulfilled by. And so kind of going into, this next school year, I decided that I was about to reclaim those 15-20 hours that were going to that team. And instead of giving it to something that wasn't lighting me up and energizing me, I'm going to use that to make sure that my college experience is something that I look back fondly on and say, wow, I really had the time of my life, and was involved and invested in activities that really meant a lot to me. So yeah, those are my really big takeaways. All right, so combating the enemy when it comes to procrastination. So what is procrastination? It essentially is putting off tasks, things for as long as we possibly can until we are forced to grapple with them. And typically when I say we are forced to grapple with them, it's probably because you have a deadline and it's like right around the corner and you're like, well, I don't really have a choice at this point. And so if we really break down, like, why is it that we are so inclined to procrastinate? Two reasons. So the first one is what's called an overestimation of time. We think, oh, this project is due in a month. Whew, that feels like centuries away. When really a month is a blip in our human existence, and it flies by in a blink of an eye. And that deadline that was 4 weeks away creeps up on you before you know it, and you haven't even looked at the assignment. So overestimating how much time you actually have. And then the second reason is that us as humans, we are creatures of immediate gratification. We love to experience pleasure right here in the here and now in the short term, and we want to avoid pain at all costs. So schoolwork, let's just say it, It is pain. It does not always feel good to have to study for a test or to do work or to do anything academic when it's like, whoa, I could go and hang out with my friends right now. Like that sounds much more fun when I do the comparison. But kind of my mantra to really stray away from that mentality of like, I just want pleasure in the here and now and I don't want to look at my schoolwork is we got to go back to why are we in college in the first place? Going to school because we want to make sure we get a degree so that in the future we have plenty of job opportunities and can make money and provide for ourselves and our family. So that is what you want most when you walk onto a university campus. Now, if you compare that for what you want right now, well, right now, I probably want to eat food. I probably want to, I don't know. I want to do this presentation. But essentially, you know, if we're thinking like in a college sort of environment, you're wanting to do anything but your schoolwork some of the time. And so really just keeping into perspective, making sure that you're not giving up what you want most, which is that degree, which is that, you know, making, you know, open doors to job opportunities for what you want now, going to the movies with your friend, maybe kicking back and taking a nap or etc. Making sure that you're keeping those two things in perspective. And then the last kind of thing I want to touch on as it pertains to procrastination is why is it even the enemy? Well, because we think it's our best friend. It's like, well, we don't have to do our work, but we just push it off, push it off, push it off. No, that is not the right, this is not the right mentality because I'm not sure if you know this, but humans are, you know, if we go back to ancient prehistoric caveman time, we have ingrained in us what is called the fight or flight response. And so basically our body just is when it is under pressure, when it is experiencing stress, back in the ancient prehistoric times, it's probably because we're trying to outrun some sort of animal, our body it goes into overdrive. It experiences what's called stress because our heart starts to beat really fast. You know, our all of these more long-term systems like digestion and things like that, those shut down so that in the short term, you know, we can have blood that's going to our heart. We can, you know, move our muscles. So that's what's getting the majority of our energy. Whereas long-term, you know, maybe immune system and digestive system are shutting down temporarily. But like I said, the fight or flight response is typically what is happening in the short term. What is bad about fight or flight response, what is bad about your body being under stress for the long term, which is what a lot of us experience when we're in school, when we're in really high pressure work environments, is that our body is constantly experiencing that fight or flight that is only really meant to happen over the period of 1 to 3 hours, right? And so if you are constantly, you know, having when your immune system is constantly being lowered, when your digestive system is constantly being tampered down, when your blood is constantly going to your heart and your body is in overdrive to just work, outrun the enemy of schoolwork, that's just not sustainable, right? So we're going back to that word sustainable. We're running on fumes. We're not having gas in our tank. And so if we compare this, because you're like, Mackenzie, are you digressing here? Well, let's connect this for me, connect these dots. Well, if we go back to what procrastination is all about, in our heads, we're really thinking, oh, I'm avoiding stress. I'm avoiding pain. But no, that's not what's actually happening, because what I like to think of is what's called, you see I like my analogies, the holiday plate analogy. At Christmas time, at Thanksgiving time, you know, you go and you stack all this food on your plate. And then you sit down, you're like, I don't really like that. So you move it to the side, but I really like this, so I'll eat that. And so at the end of it, you have the stuff that you don't really like, but you're not going to throw it away yet. And you're going to go back and still get seconds because you're like, well, you know, mom's watching, I don't want to throw it away. So you go back and you put more food on your plate. Well, that stuff that you didn't eat, that homework that you didn't get to, hasn't disappeared because you don't like it. It's still on your plate. And when you go back for seconds, when you go and add more things to your to-do list, your plate just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you still have that monstrosity pile that is waiting for you to eat it. And not all of it is going to be very appetizing. So kind of connecting all of this to stress is, well, by procrastination, we think moving it to the side is eliminating the stress, but it's actually not, because like I said, with that holiday plate, all the stress is still there. You're just experiencing it over the long term, which just has overall bad physiological effects on, you know, your body. So again, Procrastination is the enemy. Do not do it. So how are we actually going to make sure that we're avoiding this enemy that is procrastination? Let's get into that. So what I have invented is a little acronym that I like to call PADSA. And so we're going to break down the letters of this 5-letter fun word, I guess. It's all about how to combat the enemy that is procrastination. So first letter is P, stands for planner. So we've talked about how in a college environment, we have a ton of obligations, a ton of commitments, a lot of work, a lot of extracurriculars, just a lot of things to do, a lot of deadlines that we are juggling and having to think about. But our brain should not have to retain all of that information. You need to make sure that information in your head is translating into some sort of document, digital or, tangible, where you are keeping track of everything that you have to do. And so, that typically means investing in a planner, some sort of calendar system, whatever system of organization that works for you to keep track of everything that's happening, in your crazy schedule. Make sure you master that system. Make sure you utilize that system. And again, not try to just keep everything swirling around in your head. And so kind of what I found to be really helpful is my hour-by-hour breakdown of Monday through Friday. I had a document of literally from 7:30 a.m. and had it on this paper to 10 p.m. at night, Monday through Friday. I had all the columns, and I wrote down on this paper what exactly I was going to be doing at each hour of my day. Now, maybe that's probably a little too much, but it helped me just keep track of everything that was happening and everything that I wanted to be doing maybe from 10 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was able to keep track of it that way. In addition, I had a calendar of the entire semester. It was on one sheet of paper, tiny little boxes that I printed out. And when I got my syllabus from all of my classes on the very first day of class, I went through. Professors will typically give you all the deadlines in advance. And I wrote down every single deadline, test, paper, etc. from August all the way through December. I put it on this piece of paper, and I was like, there were no surprises. I knew what was happening 3 weeks from now. I knew what was happening 4 weeks from now. Everything for all of my classes was on there, and I was able to plan my schedule around that, because it's not like, oh shoot, I didn't know I had a 350-page book due in 5 days. There were no surprises, and you don't want that to be you. Another reason that having a planner is just so vital is because when you get to college, this is just the beginning. When you start your freshman year, that is the beginning of a world of independence. Parents aren't in the dorms with you. Your mom, your dad, your best friend, your best friend might be there, but nevertheless, this is your opportunity to be independent and to really embrace this sort of environment where self-accountability and relying on yourself is so important. And so college, your goal should be to BYOB. Typically that means bring your own bottle, but in this setting, it means be your own boss. And so the reason, the way to be your own boss is by keeping track of everything, all of your own deadlines, all of your appointments, all of your meetings, all of your everything, and not having to rely on mom or dad to be like, hey, you have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. No, you need to eliminate that sort of reliance sooner rather than later. Preferably, you should have the preference of, starting your freshman year, so that when you enter real life as a 22-year-old adult, when you graduate from college, you are completely ready to handle all that is adulthood. So starting in first year, being your own boss. All right. A stands for assess. So, typically when we have all these things on our to-do list, it is overwhelming. It's like, oh my goodness, where do I even begin with literally everything that is on here? And so this assessment step really helps with making sure that you're not just doing, let me play eeny, meeny, miny, mo with my schoolwork. And so the way to avoid doing that and being strategic about where you start and where you end and what exactly you do at certain hours of the day is by assessing 3 things. First thing is assessing the importance of each task. So 2 things go into that. One is deadline. When is it due? If you are trying to figure out if you should start on your psych homework to study for an exam that is tomorrow versus studying, doing your calculus worksheet that's due in 4 days, well, the assignment that has the more impending, the more pressing deadline is the assignment that you should prioritize and tackle first. Now, the other thing that you want to assess when it comes to the importance of tasks is grade impact. Always put your time, effort, and energy into the task, into the assignments, into the whatever it is that is going to impact your grade the most. If your exam for your psych class is 50% of your grade, whereas that calc, and you have to choose between them, and that calc assignment is maybe a completion grade that's like 10%, and your teacher's probably going to drop it if you get a 0 because they dropped the lowest assignment. Well, that 50% is going to have a bigger impact on your grade, and that should take precedence over that other assignment that will end up being dropped if you don't complete it. So really evaluating that as well. How much of your grade is being impacted by each of the assignments. Another thing to assess is, okay, how long is each of these tasks going to take? We talked about this before, being reasonable so that you're not overworking, basing it on prior experience of, okay, you know how fast you typically write, how fast those thoughts come to your head, translating that into, okay, I know that I have a research paper, how long based on my track record should this take me? And making sure that you're being reasonable about it. Also, when it comes to, assessment of how long each task will take, typically when you're scheduling assignments into your workday, you want to make sure that you're doing what I like to call, actually my writing professor from this past year called it parking on the downhill slope. And what that means is when you finish an assignment and, okay, maybe you're finishing after an hour because you have another obligation that you have to tend to, you want to make sure that when you come back to that assignment, it is very easy for you to pick back up where you left off. So maybe that means actually scheduling in an assignment to an allotted period of time so that you finish it in that hour and 15 minutes, that hour and a half, or you reach a really good stopping point, maybe the end of a paragraph, and you can pick back up with the next paragraph. Essentially, you just don't want to waste time coming back later and being like, okay, what is it that I was talking about? What is it that I was doing? You should park at a very, very, very good stopping point so that things are very easy for you to pick back up with later. And the last thing that you want to assess is where and when it is feasible to complete a certain assignment. And so what I mean by that is typically for my experiences, I had some readings that I was doing for class that I knew all that would end up happening with those readings is I would show up to class the next day and we'd have a discussion about it. Nothing official had to be submitted, nothing hardcore. I wouldn't even be singled out. Like, Mackenzie, what did you think of this reading? I could participate if I wanted to. I could sit back if I wanted to. And so with things like that, what I call more mindless work is I would even do that at the gym while I was on the treadmill. I'd be walking on the treadmill and I'd have my little tablet up and I'd be reading simultaneously. So that was an assignment that didn't demand me to sit down at a desk in the library. I could kind of do that in tandem with something else and get my workout in and know, okay, I understood the main message of this reading. I can still show up to class tomorrow and participate if I so choose. And also, like I said, going into the where and when is if an assignment requires all of your attention, you're probably going to want to do it when you're going to be, at the library or in an environment that's very distraction free and more peaceful, and you can really just dive right in. And one last thing that would go into this is considering what resources are going to be available to you when you're doing a certain assignment. So maybe if you're trying to figure out, should I study for my math test now while I'm at the library in solitude, or should I study for it later when I'm in my dorm room with my roommate who I know is an expert at math and would gladly help me out? Probably waiting till you get into your dorm room, where if you need some quick help, some quick assistance, you can just tap them and be like, hey, can you help me do this derivative or that. So just considering the resources and tools that are at your disposal when you're figuring out what you want to do when. So the D of the PADSA process is called divide and conquer. So this is the literal plugging and chugging of assignments into your workday, and saying, okay, from 12 to 1, this is what I'm working on. 1 to 2, this is what I'm working on, all based on that assessment step of, okay, importance, resources, how long it's going to take, etc. And something to also take into consideration when you're really doing this plug and chug is, when are you most productive? Some of us are early morning birds, others of us are night owls. And so I know that the homework that requires me to really be on my game and to be very alert, I do that in the morning, because that's when I'm at my peak functionality, at my peak energy level. And so whatever works for you, being strategic about when you work on certain assignments so that you're able to give your very, very, very best to that assignment. It's also important to exercise consistency for when you work on what. And so what I mean by this is your schedule throughout the entire semester, your class schedule it's going to stay the same. So you know you're consistently going to have a block from here to here, from here to here each day. And so being consistent about what you choose to work on during those assignments during those blocks from week to week. And so, for example, I would consistently, after my French class let out at 9:45, I would consistently use that 10 to 11:30 block that followed to work on my French homework. I knew, okay, I'm in the groove of speaking French and reading French and doing French. Let me go ahead and kind of carry this momentum into my schoolwork, and I would be consistent from week to week about, and even from day to day, of using that block of time to work on French. So that's what I mean when I say exercising consistency. Another thing is, as it pertains to long-term assignments, this is something where the name of the game is to eat the elephant a little bit at a time. An elephant is really, really big. It seems daunting, but if you just eat it a little bit at a time, it's not so bad. And so typically this is going to be with stuff like maybe readings that you're assigned a book and it's like 300 something pages and it's due, in 4 weeks. Breaking it up, dividing, and doing a little bit each day, 18 pages each day, 20 pages each day, so that it's not like, whoa, 4 weeks in and you haven't even cracked open the book. And same for group projects, don't overestimate the amount of time that you actually have. Get started early, get started that day. And ways to do that is being proactive about organizing group chats, organizing group meetings, and saying, hey, team, let's get together, let's touch base. You want to also make sure that you're leaving all group meetings with goals, saying, hey, let me check in with everybody. This is when we reconvene next week or in however many days. This is what everybody needs to have done, so that you know that constant progress is being made towards the completion of the assignment. And also just establishing checkpoints. This kind of goes hand in hand with leaving each meeting with goals. But by checkpoints, if you know that you have 8 weeks or something to complete a project, each week you want to say, this is how far into the project we want to be, so that by week 8, when it's actually due, it's completely done, and we don't feel overwhelmed. All right, we're on a downhill slope with S, self-discipline. And really this just boils down to, kind of returns to that process of BYOB, being your own boss, being self-disciplined about getting your work done. And so first thing you're going to want to be self-disciplined about is actually carrying out this PADSA process. And so going through all the steps, being consistent, and kind of holding your feet to the fire and making sure that you're actually doing it. You also want to be self-disciplined about just carrying out your action plan. If you say to yourself, I'm going to read 20 pages each day of this book over the next 4 weeks, it doesn't matter what comes up. You should make sure that you keep that promise to yourself. When you give somebody your word, you follow through. So same thing should happen when you give yourself your word, and just being self-disciplined about actually doing what you said you are going to be doing. And the other thing that kind of goes into self-discipline is identifying and eliminating the term that my dad introduced me to, and it's called time traps. So these are distractions that will suck up all of your time if you allow them to. So for all of us, it could be different. Some of us have time traps of texting our boyfriend or our girlfriend. Some of us have time traps of being on social media and just flipping through the pictures. Some of us have time traps of TikTok, which literally the time is TikToking away from you and you don't even realize it. Some of us' time traps are Netflix, video games, etc. The list just goes on and on. So what is it that is your time trap? What is it that in an ideal world, you're like, this is all I want to do all day long. If I didn't have any responsibilities, this would be my job. Identify that for yourself. And when it is time to work, when it is grind time, you need to eliminate that distraction. And so I like to call it, it's time trap. It's a kryptonite. It's your downfall in that moment when it's work time. It prevents you from being productive on your academics. Distance yourself from it. So typically what I do is I silence all notifications on my computer. My friends are like, Mackenzie, why have you just gone off the grid for 5 hours? It's because I don't want to even be tempted to engage in a text conversation with somebody when I'm at the library. Sometimes I will literally put my phone in my closet and close the door so that I'm not tempted by the Outlook notifications. I'm not tempted by anything that might pop up on my phone. I'm just like, if it's in a place I can't see, I can't be distracted by it. So figuring that out for yourself and eliminating it to the best of your ability so that you can work when it's time to work. And lastly, affirmation. That is the last and final A. And hopefully at this point in the presentation, you're not like, Mackenzie, you just seem like all you do all day long is just work. Do you have any fun? Like, what is your problem, girl? I would like to say that I am somebody that works hard first and then plays hard. I do like to let loose. I do like to be with my friends. I do like to go out. But I look at those activities as rewards. I look at them as fun. Just like dessert should come after dinner so that you actually eat your dinner. I think of my work as that too. I want to make sure that I get my work done first so that when I do play, when I do have fun, I don't feel like, oh man, I have this just like tickling sensation at the back of my head that there's so many things I need to do and I can't fully indulge in the fun in that moment. So yeah, have your fun. I have my fun too, but work first. You are in school for a degree. Making sure also that goes into the affirmation thing is just, I mentioned this before, taking brain breaks when you're studying, typically 5 to 7 minutes every 45 minutes to an hour. But the caveat here is whatever you want to do in your brain break, do what you want to do, but set a timer. Because if you are somebody that it does not like, if you don't hear that buzzer and you're just like that 5 to 7 minutes will turn into 20, 30, 40 minutes, that is not what I'm telling you to do. Brain break should be short, brief, quick, give you that spurt of energy that you need. But it should not be a break that just turns into literally what could have been an entire study session. So holding yourself accountable with a timer is probably very advisable. Another thing that goes into affirmation, kind of, I just tried to make the connection, is if you can't figure something out, if you are just racking your brain and you're just like, man, this project is kicking my butt, I'm not having any like new novel ideas to add to this essay, do not just keep staring at it. It's not going to get better if you just look at it and hope that things will change. Typically, what you want to do is just go, maybe that's your opportunity for a brain break. Maybe you just need to get up and walk around and get away from it. Maybe you need to shift gears and go to a different assignment, but do something else. Do not waste time on something that is in that moment is not clicking. So typically when you come back later with a new, fresh perspective, you'll notice that things will come a lot quicker to you. And the last thing that goes into affirmation is sleep. It is so important that you are sleeping in college. It is a part of the 3 S's for a reason. So make sure that you're getting enough rest at night. Some of us can run on 6 hours, others need more, but whatever works for you, prioritize it and do not sacrifice it for anything. Also, please do not feel bad about taking naps. I know they are taboo. We have napists in our society where they make us feel like naps are taboo. Naps are a very, very, very good thing. They can give you energy in the middle of a day. Just set your timer though. Wake up after an hour and a half if it's during the middle of the day, so that you're not sleeping through what could potentially be class or something like that. But making sure you're giving your brain that burst of energy to just recoup and rejuvenate. And last thing is at night, I know I really struggle with this, is I try to power through my work and I'm like, oh man, I'm tired. My eyes are getting heavy. And I'm just like, I just really, really want to finish this. No, if it is not absolutely necessary, you don't have a deadline that's right there breathing down your neck, just go to bed, because you're actually wasting time trying to study, trying to do the assignment when you are tired. And so, yeah, I think there was one more thing I wanted to say about sleeping. And yes, that is have a hard cutoff. Okay. At night, this is something that is going to be very vital. If you're not a nighttime person and you're not doing your work at night, and you wake up early in the morning, shut it down. 9:30, 10, maybe it's 9 o'clock, where you say no more work after this hour. And then you can utilize the rest of that time to kind of recoup and rejuvenate and re-up for the next day. And with all of that, we have concluded this presentation on time management and college success tips. You can see here on the screen, write it down, take a screenshot, my website and my YouTube channel. If you want more of me on your screen, check out my YouTube channel and you will get it. But with that, if you have any questions, you can contact me. I have a contact forum on my website, and I'll gladly answer any questions, comments, concerns you may have. But yes, reach out with anything that's on your mind. And with that, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie, for that awesome presentation. I know I could definitely relate to some things and was taking notes as well. At this time, we can just go to any questions that there may be.